This new world was wonderful. Everything seemed fresh and alive. Even though it had been hundreds of years since the flood, there were still countless new places man had not yet been to. I imagined that they were the beautiful gardens where Adam was king over, where Iblis fell in love with Hawa. I knew this was not the case, though. Whatever beauty I saw here was just a shadow of the beauty of my home. I wandered for countless years. I enjoy the solitude of my wanderings. I enjoy the self-reflection that being alone brought. I essentially lived in my memories. I sang to our Creator with the other jinns of smokeless fire. I laughed with Nu as he told one of his ridiculous stories. I sat with Iblis as he stared into the fire. There was a sense of peace, of familiarity dwelling in my past. There was pain, but it was a familiar pain, and I was able to see it differently now. As I wandered, I suddenly started to see people again. With people, my brethren were there. They were sitting on the backs of the humans they whispered to. Their tongues had become long and forked like a serpent's. They whispered into mortal ears, their long tongues tickling them. I could see the men rubbing their ears after one of my brethren whispered to them. I was afraid of them. They looked distorted and cruel, like they fed off of the fear and desire of humans. They were like leeches that fed on the hearts and souls of men. The only way a human could defeat them was to master his desire. Even for the best among the descendants of Adam, that was near impossible. I had learned that men were creatures of desire. Men, who were given the breath of Allah, were servants of the flesh that bore their immortal soul. It was such a pitiful predicament. They possess a part of our Creator, and that part, trapped in a prison of flesh, that did everything that was repulsive to the soul. "Andreed," a voice called my name. I spun around looking for that voice. It was strange to hear my name spoken. No one had said it since Nu. "Are you so high and mighty that you ignore your own kind now?" the voice said. My heart raced. Could it be one of my brethren? I knew it was not Iblis, but still, it would be nice to share a few moments with someone like me. I looked around and could not see him. "Down here, Andreed," the voice said again. There was no anger or any emotion in the voice. It just simply spoke with that deep, otherworldly tone found in creatures that are not mortal. I looked down and near my feet, and jumped back in horror. "We have not all been so fortunate as you, Andreed," the jinn said. He was horrifying to look at. His skin was pale like he had just escaped the ocean. His skin wrinkled and twisted. He looked like his bones were broken throughout his body. He was twisted and distorted. I leaned down and touched his pale, wrinkled face. "Forgive me, brethren," I asked of him. The jinn smiled. It horrified me, but I did not show it. He sat up and looked back in the direction he had crawled. "There is a town back there filled with us. This town is amazing, Andreed. Men and women don't hold back their desires there. We were able to feed on them like kings," the jinn said. His eyes glossed over as he remembered the city and his gluttony. "There is a man there with a strange fire in his eyes," He saw me, Andreed, and did this to me. That city, as wonderful as it is, will be destroyed, the Jinn said sadly. I stopped hearing him when he spoke of a man with fire in his eyes. Was it new? It could not be. He had passed hundreds of years ago. I saw the beautiful death claim him myself. Was this one of the many prophets that Nu spoke about? Great men like Nu chosen by our Creator to be a warning and a mercy to his foolish creations. Despite this Jinn's warning, I had to see for myself. Don't go there and read. That city is doomed, the Jinn said. He stared at me a moment. He had a sad, distant look in his eyes. He needed to feed, and he could not feed off of me. Farewell, brother, the Jinn said. He crawled away from me. He, like the others, could sense humans. He crawled off in their direction. I wanted to go to this town. I did not care if it was doomed. I could not die anyway, so whatever befell this town would not affect me. But I had to see this man. Brother! I shouted. The Jinn stopped and turned his distorted neck to look at me. What is the name of the man with fire in his eyes? I asked. The Jinn smiled. He is Lot. He does not like our kind, the Jinn replied. He shook his head as he turned away from me. It never occurred to me that the Jinn was fleeing the city, that he was afraid of what was to come. If he, a Jinn, was afraid, then maybe I should be too. But I could not resist the lure of the town. I could not resist the temptation to see another like Nu. I remember that Nu told me there would be more like him. I was eager to meet this loot. I ran to the town. The closer I got, the more of my brethren I saw. They looked even more monstrous than before. They were huge. Their skin was stretched and rolled, like wet mud was stacked under their flesh. Their pale skin sagged. They looked bloated, like they had been eating their fill without pause. They were invisible to the mortal, but not me. The Jinns here rubbed their huge stomachs erotically as they whispered and licked the ears of the men and women of this town. I was halted at the gates of this huge city. The guards were heavily armed. Their swords hung loosely on their hips. I had my cloak wrapped about me. I was taller than most mortals. My skin was many shades lighter than the people of this region. I could not hide here, even if I wanted to. They looked at me for several moments. He walked around me, eyeing me in a manner that made me uncomfortable. I could see one of my fat, engorged brethren sitting on this guard's neck. His long, forked tongue was whispering in the guard's ear. The Jinn looked at me and smiled wickedly. The guard licked his lips. "Lower your hood," the guard demanded. I did not want any trouble, so I did. The guard gasps. The people that were walking by stopped and stared at me. Even the Jinns stared at me. But their stare was of hate and jealousy. I always liked to cover my face. My features and appearance were not that of a mortal. I looked like I came from the heavens. I still possessed some of that beauty that we Jinns used to have. What I was now was a mockery of what I was. Mortals always reacted strangely to me. The guard approached me and touched my pale ivory cheek. He shuddered with pleasure as he did. "You know this town is called Sodom for a reason," the guard said. His fellow guards and those that watched laughed. I did not understand the joke until much later. I was new to these things. Apparently, some men enjoy having sex with other men. I was not sure if I was even capable of having sex. I had the organs, but I have never used them. I have never gone to the bathroom or felt any urges. They seemed like placeholders on my body. I smiled at the guard. "Can I pass?" I asked. The guard nodded and smacked me on my butt. I thought nothing of it. I figured it was the custom of these people. "I will find you tonight!" the guard shouted. As I passed through the gates, I was hit with sights and smells I did not think were possible. Everyone was naked or near that. People were drunk and touching each other without regard for others watching. Many stood in the streets, touching their organs. There seemed to be no regard for privacy. Men were ravishing women in the streets. Men were doing the same to other men. My butt was touched and slapped so many times as I passed down the street, I lost count. I did not want to be rude, so I started to slap the butts of others that I came across. They would look at me and smile. I thought it was how they greeted each other. I walked the entirety of the town. I looked in the faces of all those that I saw. None of them had the fiery eyes that I sought. I was touched, kissed, and fondled more times than I could remember. These people were strange. My jinn brethren fed off these people like huge monstrously leeches. The desire here was overwhelming. I had no interest in the things going on here. I wanted to find this loot and talk to him like I had Nu. Oh, how I missed Nu. That old bearded fool was the joy of my life so far. I sat down in an area that seemed quieter than the rest of the city. I leaned against an old brick wall. I was tired. I felt exhausted. This was new to me. I did not need sleep like mortals, nor did I tire as they did. I yawned deeply and stared at the setting sun. "This city is draining even to the likes of you," a deep, powerful voice boomed. I looked around, and I could not see where it came from. "Here, Jinn," the voice boomed again. I heard a slapping sound and turned to it. A dirty brown hand seemed to come out of the wall. I looked closer and saw bars in a small window. The smell that wafted up from that barred window made me gag. "Sin is often like that. Your flesh may enjoy it, but it makes your soul wretch," the voice said again. I had to see this man's face. I wanted to look into his eyes and see if he held that fire, if he was the one that hurt that jinn I met outside of the city. "You want to see my eyes, don't you, Jinn?" the voice asked. He knew I was not immortal. This had to be him. No one else even knew the word jinn besides those who have been touched by heaven in some way. I leaned down. My face was almost on the cold, dirty brick. I peered into the dark cell that this man was in. I had to strengthen myself in order to endure that horrid smell. I saw a man that had to be in his late 20s or early 30s. It was hard to tell with all the dirt and shit on his face. His skin was brown, like wet sand. His beard was thick and black. His eyes smouldered with heavenly fire. I gasped and pulled back. "You are different, Jinn. You recognize me," the voice said. I gulped hard and coughed as I inhaled that horrible air. "Are you the prophet, Lut?" I asked him. A smile crossed the man's brown and dirty face. His fiery dark eyes lit up. "I am," Lut said. He eyed me intently for a moment. "How did you know I am a prophet? And why are you not like the others?" Lut asked. So I told him about Nu. Lut's face lit up as I told the tale of this old prophet that I loved. Lut had heard of him too. He claimed his uncle Ibrahim is a descendant of Nu, that he is also a prophet of Allah. "I don't know why I am different from the other jinn," I said. Lut thought for a moment. "My uncle once told me that there are both good and bad jinns. Apparently, you're a good one," Lut said with a smile. I was curious about this Lut. I wanted to know how he became a prophet and why he was imprisoned. "Why are you imprisoned? Surely the Creator would not let one of his chosen suffer so," I asked. Lut laughed hard and long. I was confused as to what was funny. After a moment, Lut took a deep breath and calmed himself. "Being a prophet of our Lord is to suffer. We suffer more than anyone else. We are plagued with loss and calamity to constantly test our resolve. I would not wish prophethood on anyone," Lut said. He seemed like he wanted to tell me more. I sat back against the brick wall and wrapped my cloak about me. He was going to tell me his tale. I had nothing else to do. Apparently, neither did he. "My uncle Ibrahim is a prophet. He's a descendant of one of the sons of Nu, and thus Nu himself. Nu being a descendant of Adam, thus the bloodline of prophethood." I always wondered how Allah chose his prophets. But it seemed Allah had created a bloodline that carried prophethood with it. For as of now, all of the prophets were related. But was that coincidental, being that all men stem from Adam and Hawa? Or was that particular bloodline chosen to be prophets? I would have to look further into this later. "I have always been close to my uncle. The others shunned him a bit, for he seemed a bit off. I did not understand it until I came into prophethood myself. When Allah speaks to you, or sends Gabriel to give you a message, it stuns you. You can hardly breathe. Your knees buckle. You feel like you are being crushed by a huge weight. Almost like a mountain was set upon your back. I would see my uncle's eyes go blank, and he would fall to the floor like he was pushed violently. He would weep and mutter incoherent things. We all thought him mad. But then his eyes would clear, and he would stand. He would be drenched in sweat. But the look of awe and power in his eyes was remarkable. He would smile such a smile that would make us all jealous. We often wondered what made him so happy. How could one be that happy in this hard life that we lived? I would often sneak and watch my uncle. I was fascinated by him. I felt drawn to him, like him and I were connected in some way other than blood. This one particular time I was watching him, I saw him sit on his bed and weep. He would stare at his son and shake his head. "Why do you ask this of me, Lord?" Ibrahim paused a moment. His eyes were filled with fear and doubt. He was afraid of what he was asked to do, and he started to doubt that he actually was talking to God. Maybe he was truly mad after all. My uncle would rest his head in his hands and sob. "I cannot do this, Lord. Anything but this," Ibrahim sobbed. Then his eyes glazed over, and he fell to the floor. His entire body shook with such a force that it terrified me. "Be calm, Lut, for you share your uncle's fate," I heard a deep, booming voice say. My heart raced. I looked around and could not see where the voice came from. I was terrified, Jinn. The hot blood that ran in my veins seemed to freeze over. I could not move. All I could do was watch my uncle. Ibrahim stayed on the floor, shaking violently for a very long time. Then he lay still. I thought he had died, that the shaking of his body had caused his fragile heart to burst. He lay so still that I started to weep. I was sure that my uncle had passed, but then I heard him weep. He took big, sobbing breaths. "Yes, Lord, I will do as you command," Ibrahim sobbed. "Forgive me for doubting. I am but your humble slave, and will do as commanded," Ibrahim said. He sat up and wrapped his long brown arms around his knees and rocked back and forth. He stared at his sleeping son. The fear in his eyes was replaced by a religious fire that shook me to my core. I must have fallen asleep peering through a crack in my uncle's hovel. I awoke to the sound of my cousin Ishmael humming some song as he followed my uncle away from their hut. There was an ominous feeling in my gut. I recalled how my uncle stared at Ishmael and wept. Something was going to happen. I had to follow him. I stood and waited a moment for the sleep to pass. I did not want to be careless and alert them to my presence. I ran hard to catch them and stayed in the bushes. I kept seeing my uncle weeping and saying, "I cannot do this, Lord, anything but this." A chill went through my body as they stopped. They were high up on a hill that overlooked our small city. On the hill was a huge stone slab propped up by huge stones underneath it. It looked like a stone table with only 2 legs. My uncle wiped tears from his brown cheeks. He placed his huge dark hand on Ishmael's shoulders. "You must trust me, son, and know a side of Allah. You are my heart," Ibrahim said. He leaned forward and kissed Ishmael on his brown forehead. Ishmael looked confused. He had never seen his father like this before. "This is the hardest thing that has ever been asked of me," Ibrahim wept. Ishmael smiled at his father. He wiped the tears from his father's cheeks. "I understand, father. Allah has prepared me for what you must do. I am not afraid, for like you, father, I am but a humble slave of our Lord," Ishmael said. Ibrahim looked at his son, amazed. The fear and sadness did not leave his eyes, but he was in awe of the heart that Ishmael possessed. He was proud that his son was chosen to hear God, and that his son obeyed without question. Ishmael's obedience put his father to shame, for Ibrahim questioned, where Ishmael just accepted. Ishmael laid on the stone slab. The boy stared at the morning sky. A light started to fall on them. Ibrahim stared at his son, smiling up at the heavens. I could see his heart burst in his old, tired eyes. Ibrahim kissed his son one more time and pulled a knife from his belt. Ibrahim stared up at the sky, seemingly seeing the same thing as Ishmael. For a huge smile cracked his sad face. Ibrahim held the knife to Ishmael's throat. My heart seemed to stop. My uncle was going to murder my cousin. I wanted to run out there and tackle my uncle, to yell at Ishmael to run. But I found that I could not move. It was odd, like an animal who sees you with your bow pulled back. The animal knows that it is about to die, but it just stares at you and lets it happen. I felt like that animal, frozen in the sights of the hunter. I watched as Ibrahim took a deep breath and was about to cut Ishmael's throat. But he did not. Ibrahim, you have fulfilled the vision. A deep, powerful voice boomed. The voice seemed to shake the entire earth and the heavens. I found myself lying flat on my stomach. A bright light shone from the sky, and within stood a ram. Ibrahim petted the ram gently. It was a gift from God, a blessing for Ibrahim passing this test of his faith. Ibrahim scooped Ishmael into his old brown arms and hugged him tightly. He sobbed into his son's chest. "Oh, my son, today you have been given to me," Ibrahim sobbed. I have never forgotten that day, Jinn. Even though that was many years ago, I can still see it as if it just happened. We all have a test in this life. As prophets, our tests are a bit harder. My test is here in Sodom. God has shown me the destruction of this city. I have been trying to warn the people and save them from what is to come. They beat me and threw me in here for it. Lut said. Lut stared off into the distance for a moment. Some angels came to me, Jinn. They look like you, except where you are ivory, they were ebony. They were the most beautiful men I have ever seen. They glowed with a heavenly light. My daughter saw them first and brought them to my attention. I wanted to protect them, Jinn. Protect them from the sexual and sinful nature of Sodom and Gomorrah. I brought them into my home. I shared a meal with them. They kept smiling at me, not in a perverse way that is custom in Sodom, but the way a child would smile lovingly at his father. My wife was taken by them. She loved the pleasures of Sodom. No matter how hard I would try to dissuade her from them, she was weak. In the end, she betrayed me. She ran into the town and told everyone that I had 2 beautiful men in my home and was keeping them to myself. The sick people wanted to molest them, to touch them in ungodly ways. They are people filled with their desires. Your brethren, Jinn, were fat off of the people here. They flocked to my house demanding to see these men, demanding that I share them. Men and women alike in Sodom wanted the angels in my home. I started to become afraid. I was no warrior. I knew I could not protect them. I stared at the angels who smiled at me. "I cannot protect you. You must return to paradise," I begged them. Their look changed. They no longer stared at me as a child does his father. They became the father, and I the child. One of them patted me gently on my shoulder. "They cannot harm us, beloved Lut," was all he said. His voice was musical and beautiful. I ran out of my house to talk to the crowd. They threw rocks at me and spit at me. "Please, good people of Sodom, stop this! Allah is not pleased. The men in my home are holy. Leave them be!" I shouted. They beat me near to death and razed my home. When they could not find the angels, they burnt my home to the ground. I spent the next few weeks more dead than alive. But I did as commanded, and warned the people of Sodom and Gomorrah that Allah will destroy the city. As before, they beat me and threw me in here. Lut paused a moment. "Being a prophet is no small task, Jinn, for even my wife betrayed me. Being a prophet means being alone and living your life to serve Allah." Lut said. I did not know what to say. Lut seemed like a strong man. His eyes held the same fire as Nu. I wondered if his uncle and cousin were still alive. If so, I wanted to meet them. People close to my Creator intrigued me, for they had the once familiar scent of paradise about them. I longed to be in their presence. Being near them felt like I was near Allah. It seemed like there was a pattern here with the daughters of Hawa. They all seemed to betray their men in some way. Like they were weaker to the whispers of the jinn than the men were. "They will release me soon. Please wait for me," Lut asked. I smiled and nodded. Lut left the bars, knelt in his dusty rat-infested cell, and prayed. The rats did not come near him. They seemed to avoid him. He placed his forehead on the dirty cell floor. I did not want to think of the stains that covered it. Lut did not care, for he knew he was just a tourist in this world. Soon he would leave it and return home. He did not care for this world or the things in it. He served his Lord, and that was his sole purpose here. I watched Lut pray, fascinated by him. He was like Nu in many ways. He was focused on his purpose and would see it done. He was fierce and loyal in a way that was terrifying. If you saw him, you would not be physically intimidated. It was clear he was no warrior. But the look in his eyes spoke of a power that would crush your very soul. Lut prayed for several hours. He only stopped when guards came to his cell and released him. They grabbed him roughly and cursed at him as they threw him out of the dungeons. They mocked him and threatened to sodomize him. Lut bled from his lower lip. It seemed one of the guards struck him. This infuriated me. I knelt beside Lut and helped him to his feet. I glared angrily at the guard. The guard smiled at me. "Are you upset we roughed up your woman? Or are you the woman?" The guard mocked. I don't know what came over me. Before I could even process what I was doing, I had rushed forward and snapped the guard's neck with one hand and held the other by the throat high in the air. The guard that I held pissed himself as he squirmed and cried in my grasp. I looked at his dead companion. He was crumpled on the floor, his spine protruding from the back of his neck. His foul grin was forever frozen on his dirty face. I could not believe these men did not see what Lut was, that they could not fathom how merciful Allah was by sending Lut to warn them of their ways. I wanted to kill this man I held by this throat, but I saw one of my fat brethren smiling at me. "Do it and read. Kill the mortal," he whispered to me. For the first time, I felt the pull at my heart, the pull at my mind pushing me to do the bidding of the jinn. I had become weak in my moment of emotion. I had opened myself up to be influenced by these fat, grotesque mockeries of my brethren. I sighed deeply and threw the guard against the wall. He would live, but he would not rise for many hours. I grabbed the dead guard's sword and held its cold steel in my hand. I shivered, for I knew this was an instrument of death. It had no other purpose but to kill. I felt Lute's dirty brown hand on my shoulder. I turned to him. "We don't need that, Jinn," Lute said. His face was calm and serene, but his eyes smouldered with death and destruction. I dropped the sword and followed Lute. It was not until much later that I understood what Lute meant. He did not want a single piece of this city to escape what was to come. I followed him to the center of the city. He calmly looked around and raised his hands in the air. On any other day, with any other person, he would look like a dirty, crazed beggar. People would ignore him and molest him. But not today. He exuded a power and an air of command that stopped the entire market. "I am Lut, servant of Allah. I will leave this city forever. Allah's wrath is coming this very hour. If you wish to avoid it, beg Allah's forgiveness and follow me out of the city." Lut boomed. His voice was deep and commanding. It filled the entire city with a power that sent shivers down every mortal spine. I could see my fat brethren in the thousands whispering in the ears of the people gathered there. I could see the mortals nodded and smiling as they heard the silent, seductive voice of the jinn's forked tongue persuading them away from Lut. "Sorcerer!" a man shouted. "Black magic!" another shouted. The city seemed to come out of its daze, and they turned angrily on Lut. Lut looked sadly at them and shook his dirty head. A woman ran from the crowd and into Lut's arms. "Ado," Lut said. "I will follow you, husband," Ado said. Lut did not look pleased to see her. He simply nodded. People started to throw rocks at Lut. One struck him hard on his cheek. He stumbled back and would have fallen had I not caught him. Blood trickled down his face. I felt that rage bubbling again. I was going to murder this crowd. I wanted to tear through them. How dare they assault a chosen of God? "Be calm, Jinn. Don't fall to your desires like your brethren. As I told you, to be a prophet is to suffer," Lut said. He stood and turned his back on the crowd and started walking to the gates. Several people followed him. The mob still threw rocks, but all seemed to come short of Lut. There was some strange force protecting him. Only a handful of people stood with Lut at the gate. Lut turned to the mob that had harassed him all the way here. "This is your last chance. Leave the city with me and don't look back. Allah's wrath is great, but His mercy is greater." Lut's voice boomed again. The crowd was silent for a moment. Nothing could be heard but the whispering voices of thousands of jinn. Lut frowned. He was truly heartbroken. I can't say for certain, but it seemed he felt like he had failed. He had dreamed of saving most of the city, but yet only a handful stood with him, and of that handful, most were his family. The jinn started to scream. The scream terrified me. I looked around to see what was causing them to scream in such pain and rage. None could hear it but me and maybe Lut. Thousands upon thousands of angels stood around the twin cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. They blocked the jinn from fleeing. I recognized the look and air of these angels. They were guardians, like Malaik, the protectors of the humans and the army of the Creator. If their job was to protect humans, they had greatly failed. "It's time for us to leave this foul place. Don't look back, or you will suffer Allah's wrath as well," Lut said. I was scared. I was not sure the angels would let me pass with Lut, for I was a jinn. Like all jinn, I feared and loved my Creator. Even though the jinn here were once my brethren and had turned their back on our Creator, they still prostrated to Him. They still prayed. I could hear them scream, begging Allah to forgive them. I could hear them weep, for they knew they were doomed. I shivered. The angels that guarded the cities stared at me with disgust as I passed them at the gates. I sighed in relief as I stood outside the city. My heart raced in my chest. The entire earth seemed to shake. The sky opened up, and a huge pillar of fire fell on the cities. It happened so quickly that no one could scream in protest. They were all turned to ash. I saw Ado look at me as we neared the top of a hill outside of the city. She wanted to see what had become of her beloved city. She wanted to say farewell to the city of desire one last time. I shook my head at her, telling her, "No." She smiled at me grimly and looked at the city. She gasped and froze before my eyes. I could see death standing next to her. The beautiful ebony-skinned death. Unlike when she gently took Nu's hand, she snatched Ado's soul from her body. I heard Ado scream in pain. Death smiled at me grimly. Ado would not be going to paradise or the waiting place for the day of judgment. She was going to the same place that her beloved Sodom went to. She was going to a place of fire and pain. I turned away from death and looked at the body of Ado. It had turned into solid rock. A hand was outstretched, reaching for the city she had loved. She had never believed in her husband, and had often betrayed him. She was not worthy of the blessing Lut was. Even her punishment was a warning to humans, a mercy from God. I travelled with Lut and his children for many days. The handful of people that left Sodom with him slowly drifted off to go their own way. Their hearts and minds were forever changed after the destruction of the cities of lust and desire. Many returned to see the smouldering hole where the cities once stood. They would weep as they stared at the rock formation of Lut's wife Ado. For once in their lives, they were truly afraid for their souls. Witnessing such events can either drive you mad or define your purpose in this life. Lut seemed different as well. He looked as if a huge weight was lifted from his shoulders. If he was sad about his wife's fate, he did not show it. His children wept for their lost mother, though. Lut would comfort them and simply say, "Pray that Allah forgives her." I remember Nu telling me that there is no greater blessing for a man than his children. If he raises his children right, they will pray for him even after he has passed. Even if that man was a horrible person everywhere else, the prayers of his children were a source of mercy for him in God's eyes. I could see that in Lut's children. Their mother was not a faithful or even a good person, but she was their mother, and they loved her. So they prayed and begged God to have mercy upon her. They prayed with a love and passion that is not found in adults or for anyone besides a lost parent. After several days, we came to a small hamlet. I have never been here, but I instantly recognized it from Lut's story of his uncle. My heart raced. I wanted to meet his uncle, for he was a prophet as well. As we approached the hamlet, I could see a smile cross Lut's tired and ash-covered face. He loved this place. This was where his heart lived. It was a welcome sight after living in Sodom for all of those years. The faces of the people here were kind. Their eyes beamed, and they seemed filled with a light that I have not found any place else. They waved and smiled. They seemed truly happy. I have never seen truly happy mortals before. Life here on earth was meant to be hard, was designed to be heartbreaking. In the midst of the struggles and pains of life, to see happy people was truly a sight. These people shone like Adam when he was first created. They were truly people who loved God. "Lord!" a deep, hearty voice boomed. As we neared an old, hobbled hut, I could tell by the smile and glow on Lut's face that he recognized the voice, that the voice belonged to someone that he adored. "Aye, uncle," Lut responded and ran to the old man. Lut was like a child running into the arms of his beloved father. It was strange to see Lut so free. A few days ago he was powerful and solemn. Now he was a child in his uncle's arms. His uncle Ibrahim was a huge man. His beard was a thick, grey, tangled mess. It reminded me of sheep's wool. The grey stood out against his dark flesh. He had the weight of many years of life on his body. In his eyes there was no mistaking the smouldering fire of one who was chosen by God. Ibrahim hugged his nephew tightly. He did not ask where he was or what had happened, for he knew the burden of prophethood. He, like all prophets, knew what went on in the world. It seemed the wind whispered to them, as the jinn whispered to men. Ibrahim pulled away from his nephew and looked intently at me. His dark, smouldering eyes sent a chill down my immortal spine. I wanted to back away and cower from this man. He was more powerful than all other chosen I have encountered. He seemed to be able to see into the deepest depths of me. "Andreed," Ibrahim said. The jolly tone had left his voice. It was deep and threatening. I felt like I would turn to ash under his gaze. Without warning, Ibrahim embraced me. His big body hugged me tightly. "Allah loves you, Andreed, and thus I love you," Ibrahim said. He let go of me and motioned for us to come into his hovel. I did not know then, but the meaning behind Ibrahim's words was beautiful. Allah loves you, and thus I love you. Those words struck me like lightning in my heart. It brought back a memory of when I was in paradise. Every now and then a creation would run through the heavens shouting, "God loves so-and-so." We would all feel love for that creation. I remember one time an angel ran through paradise shouting, "God is displeased with so-and-so." We would all feel displeased with that creation. I wondered if an angel just ran through paradise and shouted, "God loves you, Angrid," and all the creations that once called me a betrayer now smiled and loved me again. The thought brought tears to my eyes as I stared after Ibrahim. I wept. To be loved by Allah again would be the greatest gift, the greatest mercy. Later on in my life, I would ponder this again. Was being loved by Allah truly a blessing to the living? For those loved the most by Allah often suffer the most. All of the prophets I have met have told me that to be a prophet is to suffer greatly. I did not have time to ponder on this too much. A younger man placed a warm hand on my shoulder. His eyes smoldered with the same fire as Ibrahim and Lut. He was like them, a chosen of God. I was in the presence of 3 of the greatest men ever to live. "My father is right, Angrid. Allah loves you. But like all who he loves, you will suffer," the man said. He seemed to have read my mind. He patted my shoulder and entered the hovel. Joyous laughter erupted soon after. "Ishmael," the deep, booming voice of Ibrahim sounded. "I have missed you, cousin," Lut said. The years I spent with these men were amazing. I was just as happy with them as I was with Nuh and his people. Like with Nuh, I stayed with them for hundreds of years. The beautiful ebony death would visit us to claim one at a time. Each time one was claimed, the earth seemed a bit darker. The brightness that lit this hamlet seemed to diminish. Finally, death came and took Ishmael. He was an old man with a huge family of his own. He held my hand as he smiled up at the heavens. "I am for the gardens you told me about, dear Angrid," Ishmael said. He kissed my hand. I had become close to Ishmael over the years. He was very wise, and he loved the stories of paradise. He was amazed that I witnessed the creation of Adam. We spent many hours talking about everything. He had become a dear friend to me. I wept when Ibrahim and Lut passed, but it was not like when I lost Ishmael. I wept for him as I had wept for Nuh. Like Lut's children prayed for their lost mother, I found myself praying for these great men chosen by God. Mostly I prayed that I would one day see them again. The seriousness of Lut, hear the hearty laugh of Ibrahim, talk with the wise Ishmael, embrace the fatherly Nuh. I had to leave this hamlet, for everything here reminded me of them. After death came and gently took Ishmael from his body, I left. I turned my back on that beautiful hamlet and wondered. During that time, I thought a lot about my life so far, the things I have seen, and I thought of Iblis. It had been centuries since I saw him last. I remember him sitting in that cave and staring at the fire. He would whisper, "Kill him!" to the fire. I often wonder what he saw in that fire. Iblis's power was stronger than all of the other jinn. We jinn are creatures of habit. We often return to places we love and are familiar with. I found myself back at that cave, the one that Iblis took me to after I swam up from the depths of the sea. The cave seemed timeless. Very little had changed in this cave. I started a fire and stared at the fading drawing of Hawa on the walls. I felt at home here. Of all the places and people that I had loved, here in this dark cave is where I wanted to be. This world was cold and hard. This cave seemed to shelter me from the pains of living. I stayed in this cave for many years. "And read?" A deep, musical voice called. I sat up from where I slept and looked around. My eyes were blurry. There, by the fire, sat Iblis.